Hello, I'm Amy Zawi with the Jerusalem Connection Red Alert Report for Wednesday, March 11th. What about Purim? Purim is a Jewish celebration, a Jewish holiday to commemorate the decree of Esther, wherein during the Persian Empire she managed to save the Jewish people from a plot by a dastardly villain named Haman to kill off all the Jewish people in the region. This is the first recorded historical document about the first attempt to annihilate Jews from history, and of course it was squashed through God's will and by the hands of Esther and her uncle Mordecai. Purim was March 9th and 10th, so we're just one day out of that event. However, last week I had the honor of attending a faith briefing through the Office of the President at the White House on behalf of the Jerusalem Connection Report. The briefing was off the record, but we were encouraged to share the information that we learned during the 1 hour meeting. 3 speakers provided valuable information. The first was Special Envoy Ilan Carr, who reports directly to Secretary Pompeo. He is tasked with combating anti-Semitism. Ari Berkowitz was our second speaker. He's Jared Kushner's protege and provided informative information regarding the 80-page peace plan for the Middle East that the Trump administration issued early last month. The third speaker was Rob Greenway from the DoD, presenting information on the tactical side of fighting violence in the Middle East, which of course is spawned from anti-Semitism and anti-Western philosophies. Special Envoy Carr is the son of Iraqi Jews who fled the region. Envoy Carr served in the military as an officer for about 20 years and then was the prosecuting district attorney in Los Angeles County for about a decade. He knows Arabic and Hebrew in addition to his English. Special Envoy Carr's mission is, and I'm quoting from his website, to monitor and combat anti-Semitism advances in U.S. Foreign policy on anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is discrimination against or hatred towards Jews. The Special Envoy develops and implements policies and projects to support efforts to combat anti-Semitism. In addition to his speech, he mentioned Title VI, the executive order of the president, again recently signed a few weeks ago. And it is officially recognizing what's been happening not only for centuries, but in the last decade and a half on college campuses where Jews are being persecuted for their identity and nothing more. There's a recent denial by many that anti-Zionism is indeed anti-Semitism, but that's being called into question. The narrative from both the progressive left, the radical Islamic arm, and the traditional white supremacists has always been that Zionism is a bad word. However, we know that it's not. Moreover, my observation here, in a world where everyone's rights are supposedly protected and everyone's emotional status is coddled, so much so that a politically correct police is practically deployed in many areas and communities, and especially college campuses. It seems now that Jews and those who support them, which are in large part many Christians, all get lumped into a block of people that are exempt from such protections. Our second speaker was Ari Berkowitz, again, Jared Kushner's protege and right-hand man who helped develop and research the 80-page peace plan, and he also accompanied Mr. Kushner to the UN to present it to the Security Council last month. The good news, he said, is that it wasn't wholly rejected. The feedback that he presented to us was that oftentimes people are criticizing it when they haven't read it. He said people come to him and ask him all the time, well, what about this? And why didn't you include that? And Mr. Berkowitz has to say, well, go read chapter 12, page 72, and get back to me and we can talk. One thing they were very adamant about, Ari Berkowitz is that when people read the plan carefully, that they are open to discussion about what's not going to work, what can work better, what was forgotten, what needs to be considered. They are open to continually improving the peace plan in order to have it implemented. Again, he mentioned that this was the first time in history that it wasn't an idea about peace, but an actual implementable process to get there. Lack of knowledge, in my opinion, is one way that people seem to oppose peace or even fail to recognize the problems that are causing not peace. And the growing anti-Semitism in this world is also largely fueled by ignorance. Even Special Envoy Carr mentioned that often it is a lack of education that opens the door to hate and even denial of the problems at hand. And his office is working diligently on having educational programs be implemented throughout Europe and the West, and so that people can learn about the history and the true nature of the conditions on the ground in the Middle East. Moreover, he mentioned that America has pulled the funds that have fueled and funded the textbooks in the PA, which are horrible and practically child abuse, as they teach children to hate their neighbors, other children. After the briefing at the White House, I had the honor and privilege of spending the rest of the day with Dr. Ina Rogachti. She is an extremely accomplished woman who is the president and founder of the Rogachti Foundation, a humanist organization that works tirelessly around the world on a variety of artistic and cultural endeavors as a route or a form of education to bring people together and to illuminate the issues of the last century and keep them in mind as policies and educational programs are developed even today. She has also been and continues to provide policy advisory services to several members of the European Parliament. She and her husband Michael have this foundation, and he is an accomplished artist as well. I encourage you to Google the Rogachti Foundation, Rogatchhi, Rogatchi, and see the artwork and the beautiful programs that they have to encourage culture and art to illuminate the human condition. Dr. Rogachti is also instrumental on disseminating information and policy advice through her avid writing and blogging. Of course, her topics of expertise include anti-Semitism, Israel, history, and other historical avenues. She and I headed over to the Museum of the Bible after the event at the White House for a gala entitled For Such a Time as This, which was organized by Miss Carrie Sims. And it was to commemorate and celebrate Purim and recognize the value of this book in the Hebrew Scriptures and what it means for us today and why it's still relevant. You see, the book of Esther was the first documented account of an organized effort to annihilate Jews. And through Esther's courageous efforts, she flipped the tables on the sinister spirit and his agent Haman and managed to turn a decree to eliminate all Jews into a decree to protect them. Incidentally, during the years leading up to the Holocaust, when the Nazis first came in power, they decreed that it was forbidden to read the book of Esther in Germany because they knew in there was the hope and the avenue for perhaps flipping the tables and thwarting the Nazis' plans before it even began. They knew the power of this book, and they knew the power of God. They just chose to work against it, and at the Nuremberg trials, of course, they had their justice. At this evening event, we were surrounded by exhibitions that honor the Old and New Testaments. I was surrounded by Christians and Jews united in their love for the Hebrew Scripture and the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Pastor Aaron Froh and Rabbi Daniel Lapin provided insightful and inspirational lessons on the book of Esther, the decree, the history, the parallels from other parts of the Bible, and the eerie connections to the events of today and the last 100 years. The events of last Tuesday were thrilling for me because Jews and Christians from a wide variety of denomination all agreed with wholehearted sincerity that protecting Israel and Jews and loving them is good for the world, and we do so because God does so. While the events of Tuesday, March 3rd were in collaboration with Purim and the celebration of the decree of Esther, it actually took me back to the book of Ruth, where she said to her mother-in-law Naomi, "And your people shall be my people, and your God, my God." Shavua Tov, and have a great week.